How do I handle lease violations? So there are certain violations that are remedial and certain violations that are non-remedial. Sometimes this largely comes down to your lease, but it also comes down to state law and things like that. So speak to an attorney if you need to. If you need legal advice, please talk to an attorney. I'm not an attorney. What I would recommend as a property manager, and what we do is we thoroughly document the violation. We make sure we absolutely have documentation of whatever the violation is. We have photos, videos, written complaints. We have inspection notes. We have all the evidence we need to back up this violation. We will then communicate thoroughly. We issue written notice. Everything is in writing. Of course, we may call and discuss with that tenant and why it's important for them to stop doing this or start doing this. So we'll have the human conversation, but we absolutely will provide a written notice to further document what actions we are taking and what specifically we're requesting that they either stop or start or whatever. We cite the lease clause in that notice so that they can see exactly how they're violating the lease. And then we let them know of any charges or damages or fees associated with that and why. We provide the evidence to the residents as well. We also are consistent across all tenants. You don't want to hold one tenant accountable and not the other one. You don't want to do it at all, but especially not in like a multifamily scenario. The idea with that is that's a fair housing violation. Running rental properties is like running a business, and you need to have policies and you need to have procedures in place to help you do it successfully. You need to treat it like a business and be unemotional. And so when you make these decisions to send these lease violations, you might have one rental and they might be damaging the property and you might be super emotional about that. But you need to understand that this is a business, run it like a business. You send the proper notification, you have all the evidence that backs up your complaint. You ask the tenant to stop or cure the issue. A lot of times there's some period to cure the issue. And if they have not cured it by a certain amount of time, then you're able to terminate the lease. Now, keep in mind, that doesn't mean the tenant's just gonna be like, okay, and they're gonna move out. That likely will lead to the eviction process. And so how you handle this reasonably, and ideally you have a good relationship with your tenant where you can communicate and they can communicate back. That's why relationships matter in this game more than many people think, because you don't want to get into all that legal stuff. You want them to follow the lease, or you want them to listen to you like, hey, if you're not going to do this, go ahead and move out. But let's start that conversation now on what that looks like and what the ramifications are so that the long-term damage or long-term issues or this doesn't drag out. It would be better just to get them out of the property and do it on mutual terms. And it'll save you months of pain and cost and things like that. So if there are lease violations, there's a number of different remedies, but the idea is document everything thoroughly. Make sure your notices to cure or any concerns that you send are in writing, but you can also give them a phone call and have a human conversation. Again, if you're on that phone call, don't get emotional. Don't say anything you shouldn't. Treat it like you're just trying to reach a solution, not trying to go tit for tat, not trying to prove anything. What is the solution we can reach? Be consistent across all tenants. That's important. You don't want to violate fair housing. You don't want any of this to come back as being biased or judgmental against any type of person. So treat everyone the same. Going back to whether the violation is remedial or non-remedial, you might have a remedial violation such as they have an illegal pet. They have a certain amount of time to either have that pet screened, start paying pet fees, or remove the pet from the premises if you don't allow it. They might have noise complaints, something like that. That is a remedial violation, something that they can cure and it didn't really cause a lot of damage. You might have non-remedial violations, such as intentionally setting the house on fire or dealing drugs, like dealing controlled substances from your house. And in those situations, you're likely going to have police reports. You're going to have some crimes that happen there. Those are more serious things where you're like, you don't get a second chance at this, you're out. Now, your lease likely will define what those look like and what those are. You should not come up with those on the spot and determine whether they're remedial or not. That's going to be an emotional decision. You want to stay away from emotions. You want to have it well spelled out in your lease of what those violations are, whether they're remedial and they have some cure period, or whether they are non-remedial and the lease is terminated. You also want to look at Virginia law and what that looks like as well, like what allows for that lease to be terminated or not. So speak to an attorney if you want to dive deeper into that. But send the notice, document everything, treat everyone the same.